Regular or extra crispy?
I don't care. Extra crispy. Thank
Okay.
you.
Please don't.
I appreciate it.
Can we check number 9, please? I did
Okay.
that one wrong.
Oh, I might have done them wrong too because there's about 1,000 things going on as I'm putting them up here. I might have goofed. If any of them went goofy, I do want to go through the multiple choice ones together, but we're going to do those no matter what. But the other ones, I want you to just kind of circle or star or something, anything that went wrong, and then we can go through that together. This is uber important for today because now you're going to put 2 of them on a graph, 2 of them, and only shade 1 of the 4 regions. And that changes things a little bit. We have to have this down before we do anything else. Yes, ma'am?
My detention was switched to tomorrow. So
Okay.
I'll be able to come in tomorrow after school.
Okay.
If that works.
Yeah.
I think number 1 might be wrong because you did that one with me. I was shading at the top, which is what you told me to do.
No, y is less than the thing. You shade down.
Oh, well, you told me wrong thing.
Lies.
Well, I shaded up, which is what you told me to do, because that's what we did.
Which of these is more likely? I told you the wrong thing, or you just completely went the wrong direction?
Second option.
I will admit both are possible. Whatever. We're just going to fix it. Okay? I make goofs. But before you start a blanket statement like, you told me wrong, let's check that toot at the door. Okay. You got them all checked? Good. Remember, just because you have this copied down, just because you copied down what I put, doesn't mean that you're doing it. Some of you already saw that when I handed back previous packets, and an entire page that looked to be done, because it only had answers, was marked as not complete. Okay, you had orange highlighter everywhere. That's because I know you didn't do that. Now do it for real. Okay? There's a difference between checking your answer and copying the answer. And that difference shows up on your tests. So please be honest with yourself. Everyone had enough time to look them over. Not enough time to copy them down. So, first page, talk to me, Goose. Any of them? Besides the multiple choice, I want to do those together. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. If you remember from Friday, the difference with these is that they don't look the right way. Now, I could graph by intercepts, and I think I showed you this. If I put a 0 in for y, I get an x-intercept of 1. If I put a 0 in for x, I get a y-intercept of, divide both sides by negative, -1. And then you get those 2 points, make a slope. I can connect the dots between them, right? So up 1 over 1, I can just do that a bunch of times. And I'd get my line. So that's one way to do it. The other is, I have no idea what Sullivan just said. So instead, I'm going to get y by itself because I know how those work. And subtract x. Maybe you put that Paxton line on there because that's the thing that keeps you sane. And you get a negative y is greater than or equal to. Are those the same kind of critter? Nope. They just stand next to each other all awkward like. Is y by itself? Not yet. So I need to either multiply or divide everything by -1. Remember, multiplication and division are communist. What you do for one, you do for all. I got y is less than or equal to, flip your inequality, I divided by a negative. Negative over negative is positive, positive over negative is negative. And now, I will start at -1, invisible 1 here, I have a slope of right 1, up 1. Okay, so either way works, graphing by intercepts or turning it into slope intercept. I would bet that we're actually okay with the graphing part of it. It might be the algebra that came before that. Missing a negative or something like that back here. Okay, solid line because more ink here, more ink there. And if I want to know where to shade, two options. Option 1, I plug a 0, 0 into the inequality and say, is that true? Is 0 greater than or equal to 1? Last I checked, being flat broke is not better than having a dollar. So, if this is not an answer, then nothing on that side is an answer. I shade the other side. Okay. The other option is, got one of my kids in the other class loves this method. Like when I showed her this, she actually got mad at me that I didn't say this first. This says y is less than or equal to the line. So you'd go to where the line hits the y-axis and the y's are less, down. Down is smaller y's. Go less, less down. It just means you go to where it hits the y-axis and you shade down from there. Okay? Both those work. How about those? Okay, if you want to go on to any form of education post-secondary, you hear those words, post-secondary education? You're in secondary education right now. Elementary school is primary education, and then high school is secondary, because technically, and depending on your state, you can drop out of it. Okay, primary, secondary. You should be able to read and write and do basic arithmetic. Then we teach you the other stuff to be an informed citizen. Then you go on and do post-secondary, the specialization for your career. If you want to do post-secondary education of any kind, you're going to have to take some sort of test. Maybe that's an ACT. Okay, sophomores in the room, you're taking pre-ACT this year, so you'll get a vibe for what it's like. Maybe that's SAT. If you're going East and West Coast, some of those schools don't take ACTs, they'll take SATs only. But even if you want to go to a tech school, like Western Dakota Tech, Lake Region, any of those, at the bare minimum, you got to do an AccuPlacer. An AccuPlacer test is multiple choice, just like all those other ones. And sometimes multiple choice can be multiple guess, because you narrow down the options. When I look at those 4 graphs, I see that some of them are solid and some of them are dotted lines. What's the difference between solid and dotted lines in an inequality? Yeah, whether it's or equal to. So if I want to know what number 1 is, what can I immediately narrow my options down to?
A or D.
Okay. It is not equal to here, so that means I have to have a dotted line. This is B or C, which means this guy is also B or C, which means these guys, because they're equal to, are A or D. So right out of the gate, just by the type of line, you're able to narrow all of your options down to a 50-50 shot. Isn't guessing 50-50 better than guessing 1 out of 4? Okay. Even if you're not sure, sometimes multiple guess is okay. You just got to take your best shot at it. So, then this one. I see Y stuff less than 2. Could you turn this into slope-intercept form? You just add 2x over, right? But I just see that it's something, something plus 2. Look at options B and C of them. Which one has a y-intercept of 2?
B.
There you go. And if this one is B, then this one must be C. Look at how quickly you're able to narrow those options down. 2. Negative 3x, nothing. What is nothing in math?
0.
0. Okay. I've got a 0 for a y-intercept. A or D, which one goes through 0, 0? Okay. So I get to go to D, which means this guy's A. Multiple choice can be broken down like this. All right. I know you've had teachers do that before with you. I don't know when the last time was someone went through multiple choice in math with you. I try to keep my tests in here free response for this class because I want to give you as much credit as I can for the work behind it instead of just right or wrong. In fact, even in my pre-calc classes, the only multiple choice test I have at all is the final. And when kids hear it's a multiple choice test, they get excited. They're like, yeah, multiple choice, I can guess. And then I tell them how I make them. I make them like the ACT. Okay, I got a little bit of a background in assessment. Y'all know that smarter balance test that you took, when you were youngins? You take it again as a junior. I was kind of on the pilot and proofreading group for it. The junior one, years ago. Before that, there's a version of a standardized test like that in Minnesota that is required. I don't know if it still is, but it was required for graduation. The MCA, the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment. I kind of wrote part of it, so I know how to make tests valid. Boy, does it suck when a kid is like, yeah, multiple choice, I can guess, this is going to be good. That's because you know that tests are usually really badly written in high school. How many of your multiple choice tests are like, who was the 32nd president of the United States? And option D is Kermit the Frog, and option C is the name of the teacher. Like, really bad tests. Like, it's a 50-50 shot anyway. No. When you do a math multiple choice test, there are 5 options. This is correct. This one, I'm intentionally going to miss a negative and run it all the way to the end zone. That's going to be one of your choices. I'm intentionally going to forget to flip my inequality, and that's one of my options. I'm intentionally going to miss my solid or dotted line. That's one of my options. I'm intentionally going to do my slope backwards, and that's one of my options. The most common errors that kids make are part of the possible guesses. And then everyone in the room, their like stomach just kind of hits ground floor, and they're like, "Oh." That's how an ACT is made. That's how an AccuPlacer is made. That's how a valid multiple choice test is made. So I did want to just talk about this, that sometimes you do just have to break it down to a guess. You can have an informed guess, but it's not always going to be clear to you. Okay? Pre-calc kids mess their huggies when I tell them that, because those are all the overachievers anyway. You know what happens to an overachiever when you tell them that if you make this tiny mistake, you're still going to get the answer that's written on there? They freak out. What about backside? Any of them? Okay. You know, years ago, I had a open up 3-4. I had a honors geometry class. I threw the book at them. Like they had to prove everything forwards and backwards. I made it tough. You know what happens to those kids when you make every single answer on the test 1? Every question came out to 1.
Oh, that's so.
I bet they had a panic attack.
So then that's like when you're filling out the ACT, you have to fill out the same letter in a row, and you're like, something has to be wrong.
You know what happens to all the overachievers when they get 1, 1, 1, 1, and they get to the next one, they're like, it's going to be 1, but what if it's not 1?
Well, that's just me.
I know, it's hilarious. All right, so I want everyone, okay, we're all at 3-4. Flip it back 1 page. I want to come around and I want to see what your graphing looks like, what your shading looks like. Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna pull it off.
Because, remember when we were talking about how you shade these? Like some kids lightly shade it, some got the pencil bag full of a different, 1,000 different colors. Some kids murder their paper. Okay. When I get more than one of these on the same graph, which of those kind of kids you are matters. Because it's going to be the difference between having a neat graph that we can understand versus it looks like a pen vomited on your paper. Okay? Case in point, you all see on your paper, can you even tell where they shaded? Like with, I know with the copier, sometimes it gets a little fuzzy. Okay, 3 of those sections are shaded. 2 of them are very light, 1 of them is very dark. Okay? The very dark one is my final answer. And that's where this gets scary. So, I'll show you what we mean. What if I graph my 2 lines like this? Okay? And purple one says, you're going to shade down. So then you come along and do this. You know who you are. And then the blue line says, shade down. What's my answer?
That one's a good question.
Okay. Just like when we did systems, right? I did a line and a line, and wherever they crossed was my answer. Wherever they're both shaded is my final answer. So then that kid would come along and they would say, all right, I know where my final answer is. So I'm going to come back and do, what's the color in between? And they just murder their paper in that corner. Isn't this a super sloppy graph? Okay. So, there's other ways you can do this. Oh, man. You didn't pick up all your Play-Doh. Blue line says down. Another way that you could do this is some teachers might show you the crosshatch method, where all of these are going to be shaded down. So I just crosshatch it like that. This says down. And wherever you see the waffle, that's your answer. Okay? So then I'll come back and I'll just shade that area. Is that a little bit neater? Okay. So that's another way you can do these, and it's going to be neater. Some kids, especially the ones with the 19 different colors, are going to come along with their different highlighters. And they're going to say, well, this one's this way, and this one is this way. What's my answer? It can be kind of hard to see the color overlap, but it's here, right? So then they would come back and they'd grab, I don't know, a different color, and then they would murder that section. I can't even tell the difference, okay? All of this, I believe, is sloppy. Instead, y'all ever seen like an air traffic controller map? Where it'll have a little image of a plane, and then it's just got an arrow showing you which way they're going, like that. So there's all these planes flying over, I don't know, downtown Phoenix, but this shows you which direction they're going. It declutters things. And that's what I like to do with mine. If this is going to shade down, I just put a couple little arrows on it to say I'm going to shade down. And there's no happy accidents. There's only murder. Oh, wait, that's what my headcanon of Bob Ross. Okay. If I put all of those arrows on there, and only the arrows, can you now tell in which section all of the arrows are pointing where they're going to be happy? So then I'll come along and I will only shade that region. And doesn't that make my graph a lot neater? Okay, so you do you. These are all just ways to do it. But everyone in this room better be able to pick up your paper, look at your problem, and tell where the answer is. I'm also going to tell you, doing math in pen is bad. Okay, there's two graphs, solid and dotted lines, shaded in different regions. They have different y-intercepts and different slopes, and y'all, if you ever goof up, it might not be a bad idea to use something that's erasable instead. So if anyone wants something that is erasable instead, and you want to do all the colors, what?
Pencils are erasable?
Yeah. You just don't use a really nasty, like 1982 rubber eraser. Use a good polymer one. Okay? So if anyone wants a couple extra colors, if you'd rather have that for doing your shading for your graphs, that's cool. Okay? The big thing is you don't murder your paper with it. You lightly shade. Okay? Oh, now we want one?
Yeah.
Okay. So, That's all the prelude out of this. The lesson itself is not very difficult. We're only going to do a couple examples, and then I think you're going to be fine, and we can set you loose to work. Here we go. These are called systems of inequalities. Inequality because it's got Pac-Man on there. System because it's got more than one. So I just graph them both. They're going to start by walking us through everything. Okay, we're going to start with this guy. They say graph to this one. Where do I start?
Plus one on the y-axis.
She's learned. Okay, so I'm going to put a dot at 1 on the y-axis. I start there, and then my slope. There's a 1 in front of x. I know that means always to the right. We go up because it's positive. Up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And then solid or dotted. More ink here, more ink there. Which way do I shade? I can always plug in 0, 0. If I plug in 0 and 0, I get 0 is greater than or equal to 1. Is that true? 0 is bigger than 1.
No.
No. It doesn't include 0, 0, so I'm going to shade away from it. So solid line. And if I'm going to shade away from it, then I'm just going to put a couple of little arrows on here to say, I'm shading that way. I'm not going to shade that way yet. But you all know it's that half of the graph. You could lightly shade that side, lightly shade the next one, and then murder the part that matters if you want. I'm going to use the arrows. Then, green. Where do I start? 2. I've got a negative 1 out front, so my slope, down 1 into the right one. Down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. We have beat this to death by now. That whatever we had from last year should be officially like locked back in our head. Solid or dotted? More ink here, more ink there. The solution. Does it include or not? Remember, in addition to putting 0, 0 in there, 0 greater than or equal to 2. True or not true?
Hold on, what?
If I put 0, 0 in,
No.
that is not true. So I don't want to shade the part that has 0, 0. I'm going to shade away from it. I'm going to use my little arrows. My solution is where those two graphs overlap. So do you see what we mean by if I had shaded this really lightly, and then I had shaded this really lightly, you could just come back and murder this part. That's okay. Don't do that. I don't want to do that. I want a nice, neat graph. Because out of all of those regions, do you see where all of my arrows are pointing up into that little triangle? So if I use those arrows, I can just shade this area. And I'm done. Okay? So you're going to shade multiple of these now. And we have to be careful that our answer is distinguishable from our work, because our work is shaded regions. Come on, you. Frank. Okay. Before starting any of the other stuff, I want you to look at the graph itself. Look at the coordinate grid. Going by twos, you got to be careful. Watch your steps. There were some of us that really liked putting little like tick marks on here, so we knew to count every half a box. Okay, if that's your jam, do it. We're going to speed this up a little bit. First one. Where am I starting? Okay. Slope is? That's a huge dot. Okay, if I have a negative 2/3, we always go left to right like a book, and negative tells me down. So be careful, that's down 2, right 2, 3 is halfway through the box. Down 2 over 1, 2, 3. Down 2, right 3, or reverse the flow up to left 3. Now, I know that bothered some of us. Remember, we were able to change this. We could multiply both of these by 2 to say down 4 over 6 instead. If the scale was going by 2s, you can just multiply by 2s so that it matches a little bit better. From the 4, go down 4 over 6. Oh, hey, look, it hit the 0, 6, or the 6, 0. So, however you do that, I see less ink here, dotted. If I plug a 0, 0 in there, it doesn't work. Also, this says y is greater than the line. Okay, y is greater than the line when I shade up from the line. So I'll just throw some arrows on there to say I'm going to shade that way. Now watch things get wild here. I'm using a solid line starting at -2, and I've got the exact same slope. Before I go actually making the line, what is that called when they're the same slope? Parallel lines. Now when we had parallel lines before, we ended up with no solution. Watch what happens here. Down 2, right 3, down 2, right 3, down 2, right 3, or down 4, right 6. Either way. And this says y is less than or equal to the line. So I shade down. Also, if I put 0, 0 in there, I get 0 is less than or equal to -2, which is not true. It does not include. So, where are all those arrows pointing? Where are they all going to be happy? Remember the restaurant example. This is, I want to eat Italian food. My kid wants dino nuggies. Where are we going to get that? Nowhere. Looks like Dad's taking one for the team again. Dino nuggets it is. Okay. This is another reason why I like using the arrows, because if you had lightly shaded both areas, I want you to see what your graph looks like. And now I say, where's the solution? Well, they don't overlap. So why is any of your graph shaded? You're only supposed to shade your answer, right? Now, if I lightly shaded, murder hobo this corner, that's one thing. But when they're going opposite directions like this, I shouldn't have shaded anything because it doesn't have an answer. There is no answer, so I better not shade anything. I should just write no solution. Because there's nowhere that they're going to overlap. Okay? Now, another reason to use those arrows. I'm going to make this bigger. Okay? Don't worry. I'm just making it bigger. Make big. 4. The first one was dotted, right? Okay. And the second one was solid. Starting at, was it 6? 2. -2. Okay. So, here's another reason I like those arrows. What if this was shaded this way? And the yellow one shaded this way. Now what's the answer? That top right corner, right? Because they are all pointing up at that corner. But again, watch what your graph looks like. Because if I shade this one, and then I go and shade this one, isn't it kind of hard to tell what your final answer is? Okay. But if I have the arrows, then I can just shade the top right corner. So just because they're parallel doesn't mean they're going to be no solution this time. So what this boils down to is do what you were doing the last 2 days. Graph this line, shade. Graph this line, shade. Where do they overlap? That's your answer. Okay? Try 2 of them, walked out, line by line, step by step. They're written out for us. Watch your scale on the second one. It goes by 2s again. I'll help you do it. You got neighbors to work with. I just want you to do these 2 and make sure we're okay. You were doing great with this the other day. Come on.
Yep. I'm doing good. She's going to have to teach me.
Start with this guy. Where's my first dot?
So,
Write your slope. We put your arrows next to it.
there's up one.
You're right,
Okay.
because the negative always means down.
Okay.
Yep. If we always go left to right like a book, then this is plus or minus tells me up or down. Okay? Now, if we ran out of space, You can also reverse the flow. Who is buzzing? Phone's off when you come to class. Okay, solid or dotted?
Dotted.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to use a, you said dotted, 0, 0. Plug a 0, 0 in here. Get 0, 0, 2. Is 0 less than 2?
Yeah.
So that means I will shade towards the 0, 0. So it includes it. Go again. Where's your first dot?
-5.
Okay. Write your slope. There you go. It happens. Draw your arrows next to them. Because it's positive, we go up, always left to right like a book. Make some more dots. Uh-oh. Oh, you got room. You can go right 1 and up 2. Okay. Excuse me, madam.
What? I was making sure you can't
Sometimes you just put those fingers out in front of you, right and left.
Wait, over 1, up 2.
There you go.
Should I keep going?
Yep. Well, as many as you can. The more, the better.
What if it's in the same dot?
Well, that means that would have been the solution for just lines, not shading lines. So it's a happy coincidence. Solid or dotted?
Solid.
Ew.
That's a pretty straight line.
Ew. Okay. And then you said solid, so write solid.
Got stuck in my hair.
There's an easy solution to that.
No, I'm not shaving my head.
Okay. Plug in 0, 0. 0, 0, -5. Is 0 bigger than -5?
Yes.
So we shade towards the 0, 0. Do you see which of these 4 sections all of them are pointing to? So you shade just this area. Okay. Harriet, we should have, assuming you can make lines, start at 2, down 1, right 3, or up 1, left 3. I'm going to use a dotted line, and if I plug in 0, 0, I get 0 is less than 2. That is true. So I'll shade towards it. Then, next line. I start at -5, way down here. My slope is 2. Remember, you can always put your slope off to the side here with your arrows. Up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. Put it on auto tune, make millions of dollars. Will I have a solid or dotted line? And then again, I plug in 0, 0. I got 0 is greater than or equal to -5, which is a true statement. So I will shade towards the 0, 0 because it includes that as an answer. Wherever those two graphs are overlapping, I look at all my little air traffic controller arrows and say, they're all headed over here towards that 0, 0. And that should be my shaded area. Okay? This one, same business. I'm using a solid line. We're going to start at 7. Yeah, 7. Slope is down 1 over 1. So, womp, 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 womp. It includes 0, 0 because if I plug zeros in, I get zeros less than or equal to 7. That's true. It's a true. All right, the other one, careful. Where's my y-intercept on the second one? It doesn't look like my regular ones. We saw ones like this last time. -3. Right? Isn't this y is greater than 0x minus 3? So I go up nothing over 1. It's these horizontal lines again. Okay, I'm going to use a dotted line. Less ink here, less ink there. The solution, last I checked, 0 is bigger than -3, so it is included in my answer. I'm going to shade up towards my 0, 0. Everywhere that all of my arrows are pointing is my answer. So we're going to be that area. Okay. Yo.
So for number 2,
Mhm.
we find out the x, and we just do -1 over 1.
Yep, that's my slope.
Oh,
-1 in front of the x. It's our invisible friend. We put it over 1 to make it a fraction, which means I go to the right like a book, and down means negative. So that's the heart of it. Like, that's it. That's 3, 4. It's just, how good are you to keep doing this? I'll go one more time. It's on a scale. I got a dotted line. 0 is not greater than 8. I'm going to start at 8. And, okay, Miss Emily, what's my slope for the first equation? Okay, it's that invisible 1 again. Which means to the right and down. Down 1, right 1 is in the middle of that box. If you don't like down 1, right 1, you can always multiply them by 2 to make more sense with the graph. I can go down 2, right 2. We said we were doing dotted line. And we don't want to include 0, 0 because y is greater than the line.
wait, what?
If I plug 0, 0 in, I get 0 is greater than 8. Having 0 money is not better than having 8 money.
Can you see that? I can't.
See what? The graph? The numbers? What are we talking about?
Where do you put the dots? There's like a million of them up there.
At 8.
confused.
Put your first dot at 8.
Okay.
Down 1 over 1 is right smack in the middle of the box because you have to count by twos.
Oh.
We didn't like that, so I doubled it to say down 2, right 2, so that it fit my scale. Round 2. I've got a solid line. I'm going to start at -3. I got a slope of 4. Always left to right like a book. We're headed up 4. Careful, up 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1 is right in the middle of that box. Up 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1 is right in the middle of that line. Up 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1 is right in the middle of that box. They're all going to be in that goofy spot. Okay. Connect the dots. Plug 0, 0 in. I get 0 is greater than or equal to -3, which is true. I will include it. I'm going to go towards 0, 0. Do you see where all of your arrows are shaded? Where all of them are going to be happy? It's that tiny little soul patch at the top, right? I want you to think of that like Junior who's trying to grow facial hair but can't, so they just have a little fluff right there, right? That little spot. Okay, it's going to be this little area up here. I'm terrified what my kids are going to look like. My boy's already like, he's got a hairy back like me. He's 5. Like that kid's going to be a full-blown Wookiee when he's in high school. He's going to have like the giant Duck Dynasty beard or something. Okay. Y'all cool with it? Like, I figured that we wouldn't have to keep going through all the examples because I'm betting we're okay with them. I want to go to words because we're always scared of words. So 4 and 5, I do want you to come back and do them eventually. But I'm going to come down here to 6. Because we get kind of weirded out when we see decimals and fractions in the same equation. Where do I start this? 8.35. Can you ballpark 8.35? About, not quite halfway through the box. And if the slope is -2/3, I can still go down 1, 2, right, 1, 2, 3, and it's just in that weird spot. Okay? I can go down 2, right 3, down 2, right 3, and they're all in weird spot. Solid or dotted line? Solid. More ink here means more ink there, and remember this says y is less than or equal to the line. Are y's less than or equal to up or down? Where are y's less? Up or down?
Yeah.
Y's are smaller, down, right? So I'm going to shade down from this guy. Go do the other one. I'm going to shade up from this line. I'll start at 10. Uh-oh.
Go down.
Oh, it's down 1 over 1. Man, if that was up 1 over 1, we'd be really hosed. Okay. See how it's getting closer and closer and closer and then finally overlaps? Solid or dotted? More ink here, more ink there. And this says y is greater than or equal to the line. So I will shade up from this. Can you tell where the arrows are overlapping? You'll see down at that wedge in the bottom right corner. Okay. I did all of this without reading the words for the problem, like even knowing what the context of the problem is. It was just graph the thing. It says you're going to buy lunch meat. You're going to buy a bunch of ham and chicken. And they want to know how much of each they can buy. Well, apparently anything down in this little wedge here is going to work for them. So maybe they buy 10 pounds of this and 1 pound of that. Well, it's in that range, so it works. It's going to fit their budget. Okay. This is a super simplified version of stuff that companies will actually do. There's something in Algebra 2 where you do like 4, 5, 6 of these on one graph. And then you find the vertices of the shaded region, you plug them into an equation, and you can find out what will maximize your profit or minimize your costs. Companies do this. Y'all know Miss McCreary, right? Yeah. Years ago when she was my student teacher and I went through linear programming, which is the upgraded version of this in Algebra 2, she said she went and showed her brother, who owns I think it's like a t-shirt business, like graphic arts. He started using it. And he said he actually makes more money now because he knows where he can get more bang for his buck. Math has a purpose. It's just whether that purpose is going to fit your chosen career. Okay? Not everyone busts out trig tables and uses like trig functions to design brackets in their garage. Some of us are dorks like that. Okay? So.
It is way off topic. My niece, she taught the kids at her daycare how to play blackjack, and she actually took their money. And she was only like 6. So I just think it's pretty funny.
That's shady. I have a belly button. And you go to the next page and it's practice. Okay? They were both random and useless. So, the 2 on that page, and then start the assignment. You've got a half hour, plenty of time. I think you'll be fine. Okay? Worky, worky. Ask questions if you got them. Yes, ma'am?
What food group do you think a maple syrup would be?
Candy.
I mean, okay. Do you think it'd fit any of these or not?
It's in candy.
So,
It's literally sugar.
what if I put in, fat?
No, it's a sugar. It's not fatty at all.
So, I just leave it blank then for that?
Hold on.
I looked it up and it didn't answer.